Good afternoon. Welcome to Social Media Week London. My name's Sam Michelle, and I run Chinwag, which means usually it's my fault for stuff in general. Thank you for coming along to this session. This is the first event. Come in, grab the seats at the back. This is the first session at the Social Media Week Hub, which is very generously supported by Google+. And I'd like to say thanks to our sponsors generally. Nokia have been amazing in supporting this whole event, and we're very lucky to have Becky from Nokia on the panel as well. I'd just like to say a few bits of housekeeping while I remember. So firstly, the Wi-Fi in here has improved massively since last year, and there are 3 Wi-Fi hotspots. The details are on the wall, and the passwords are there too. I think there's a gotcha in that the password is all lowercase, rather than having a capital F. So if it's not working, that might be why. With this many people in the room, it also will be a little bit slow. Please do feel free to tweet up a storm, but if you can turn your phones to silent, that would be brilliant. Although if you have a really embarrassing ringtone, maybe leave it on for the comedy value. The hashtag for the event is #SMWMindTheGap, or if that's too long and you've got sausage fingers like me, SMWLDN will do just as well. We've got a brilliant panel covering, I think, every aspect of the skills spectrum, and also a microphone that's on the blink. So you're also experiencing the teething problems of the first event in this venue, which is cool. So to get the most out of these sessions, it's best to engage as much as you possibly can. And I know Kathryn, our chair for the session, is going to get you all involved. The other thing to mention is that this session is being live streamed. There's 2 cameras at the back. And so that we capture your words of wisdom and your questions and the discussion. If you've got a question, can you stick your hand up? We've got guys at the back, or ladies at the back, who will bring a microphone to you if you can speak into the microphone. And speakers, in case somebody doesn't get the microphone, can you repeat the question if it doesn't come out over the PA? So that's enough from me. Thank you all for coming. I will hand over to Kathryn Corrick, who's chairing the session. You've got a microphone.
I've got a microphone. Can you all hear me? Otherwise, I'm going to have to use one of these additional ones. So, welcome everyone. We're going to try and make this. I want you all to just relax a bit, because you're all looking a bit tense. Just kind of get a bit comfortable, because this is as much about you as about my lovely, lovely panellists here. Because I looked down the list of attendees, and we have the most amazing, not only the amazing set of panellists, but amazing audience. We've got some students in here. Hands up, any students? We've got some employers. Hands up, some employers. Oh, only one. Really? A few employers. Also, lots of other experts within here. So this is as much about you as it is about our panel. And I'll explain how that will work in a second. Just to let you know who I am, my name's Kathryn Corrick, at kcorrick on Twitter. I do lots of work with in communication strategy, particularly in social media and digital, training people, be it employers, and businesses and organisations, but as well I work a lot in universities as well. So hopefully I can see some of the different sides of what's been going on in the UK. But it's not about me, it's about these lovely people here. To my left, that is right, left, we have Becky Gloyne, and she is Global Talent Sourcing Acquisition Manager for Nokia. And it's not just marketing, is it? It's across the board.
No, it's marketing, but global.
But you have global. She's important. Then we have Charlie Duff, who is the Community Manager for Brave New Talent. Give him a wave. Then over here, we have one gentleman on our panel. I love the fact we have so many women. It's brilliant. But we have Niall Cook, who's the co-founder of Sociagility, and he'll explain what that's about in a moment. Ruxandra Fratescu, and she is a recruitment consultant. And then finally, we have Lucy Armstrong, who has joined us so just at the last minute, thankfully. She's representing HR in particular. She's a HR manager for 1,000 heads. So that is your lovely panel. The way we're going to do this is these guys are going to speak for about 5 minutes each, max. Then we're going to have a chat. You're going to have to talk to the person next to you. So be prepared for that. And that's to kind of get out your stories, your questions, your comments, so that after that we can have a really good conversation as a whole room. We are, not experts here. The expertise is spread across everywhere. So that's how we're going to be. And we're going to, I think, try and finish about 2:15, maybe 2:30. So if any of you got important meetings, that's roughly when we're going to stop. So I'm going to start with Becky. It's over to you.
Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Becky Gloyne. As you've kindly said already, I'm the Global Talent Acquisition Manager at Nokia. So I'm responsible for developing all our sourcing strategies, methodologies, and helping on strategic hiring for marketing across the globe. Another part of my role is helping with employer branding globally as well. So I kind of get involved in a bit of everything, and I'm the HR contact for social media across the whole business as well.
Pass it on.
And then we'll kind of...
Okay, I'm Charlie, and I'm really upset that Bill Borman doesn't appear to be in the room. I'm sure I'd have heard if he was, because you just called me Charlie Else, which is his favourite nickname for me. But if you want to tweet me, I'm Charlie_Elise, and I'm Community Manager for Brave New Talent. Brave New Talent has recently launched our new skills communities, which are all about building up skills in all kinds of areas. So I'm kind of interested in that. And as a company, we do so much social media that we offer a social media internship. And I've got my interns in the room. You going to wave? Yay! Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ruxandra. I work as a recruitment consultant at K2 Partnering Solutions. We are a global IT staffing company, and I mostly do contract recruitment. I'm quite young in this job. I've been doing it for 8 months, let's say. However, another reason why I'm here and I strongly feel about social media is because I got my job 100% through social media last year. I was lucky enough to be invited at an event called Through London last year in February, where Bill Borman, whom she just mentioned, became my mentor. He's a very important figure in social media recruiting nowadays, so he taught me a lot of stuff about social media, and he made me rise this passion for social media and how especially graduates use social media to get jobs. So that's pretty much all about me.
Hi there, I'm Lucy Armstrong. I'm the HR manager at 1000 Heads, so I look after the London office as well as our global offices. Part of being the HR manager is training and development, which is obviously seeing what skills are out there and what are missing, but also just in terms of recruitment. So we have a huge push on recruitment at all times in the company, so it's always really good to talk to people, find out what they feel is missing, what is the responsibility of a company, what is the responsibility of a university or whatever else, where do these people find these skills? So that's what I'm most interested to talk about today.
Hi, I'm Niall. I'm from Sociagility. I'm the co-founder. It's basically an agency that focuses completely on helping clients build their in-house capability. So one of the things we do alongside strategy and metrics and all those kind of things that you need is to help a lot of our clients find the right people, work out what kind of people they need in order to deliver their objectives. So hopefully I can bring a point of view that will contribute towards the debate.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, thank you.
So we're talking here about the gap in skills, and it's between perhaps, as being suggested in your intros, the students, employers, but maybe also in universities. What is it that people are learning at universities? Is it the right stuff? What is it that employers need? Also, though, what are the expectations perhaps by students who need to get jobs? So who would like to kind of kick us off with their views and on where we need to be thinking and going? I'm looking at you, Lucy, you see.
Okay, 1000 Heads is a word-of-mouth agency, so we are about helping brands to build lasting social relationships with people. Social media is a huge part of that, but it's not the only part of that. So for us, it's about finding well-rounded people who can use social media and utilise it, but it's not necessarily the be-all and end-all. I think particularly in graduate recruitment, I think there are other skills that are missing that are not being taught within university. competencies, and I think a lot of those are life skills and professional skills. I think there's a bridge to be built there. So I think it's interesting to figure out, what are these social media skills that are missing? Are those the ones we need to be teaching, or training can employers do that? But I think even just getting the job, if you say you can use Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook, that's one thing, but I think there are a lot of other skills that people need to be able to use in terms of, everyday life and working with it.
And what do you think those skills are?
I think one of the huge things that we find, especially at that more junior level when people are trying to get into the job market, is basic skills like organisation, delegation, prioritisation, crisis management. I think it's even teaching students how to answer those questions in an interview so that they can use their experiences. They may not even be experiences within a work environment, but key transferable skills that they can show when they have used those things that make a well-rounded, driven, passionate, enthusiastic employee, which is obviously what we're looking for. In terms of social media, I think a lot of people use it, but just because you can tweet and put something on Facebook doesn't necessarily mean you can execute an advertising campaign that uses Twitter and Facebook and things like that. So I think it's being able to see the difference there.
Niall, we were talking beforehand as to whether it is students' responsibility, or what's the responsibility perhaps more of businesses to hire?
Well, I mean, I think this is an interesting point. I mean, I think, whenever we're talking about a skills gap, we're talking about the distance between two things. And clearly one of those things is the skills that a employee might bring. But the other side of the gap is the skills that the employer needs. And I think there's still quite a bit of work to do there, in actual fact. I mean, certainly from our experience, talking to brands who are still building their social media strategies, or at least moving from a stage of sort of immaturity to taking a more rounded view. Clearly one of the things that they feel they need are people with the right skills. But I think part of the problem is that quite a lot of them don't know what those skills are. They don't have the skills themselves. They're marketing directors, communications directors. They know they need them. They know they need people who can do this stuff. And their sort of modus operandi probably so far has been, that's the problem of the agency. Let's let the PR agency, the digital agency, the advertising agency deals with that because they say they can do it, so we don't know any different. But I think what a lot of them are realising is that's not really a sustainable position for the future. It's going to move towards needing agencies for some things and needing in-house people for others. So I think the big issue for me is how do we help, how do we teach, how do we train, how do we educate the employers about the skills that they need so that they actually become more informed buyers and actually are able to evaluate the people who are put in front of them properly to see, exactly to Lucy's point, are these people who actually really understand how to apply social media to my marketing and advertising issues, or are they just people who know how to use Twitter and Facebook?
We were just talking beforehand about some of the bigger platforms that maybe might be helping some internal training that Nokia are using. Do you think that's just one thing that employers are doing? How do you answer that challenge, really? Because that's a big one.
Yeah. A big trend of ours, a big topic, part of our current business strategy is actually considering the social opportunity in everything we do. I suppose, maybe a year or so ago, it very much fell just within the marketing organisation. Now that sort of social opportunity is coming up within HR, it's coming up in comms, it's coming up in care. So it's very much, we're aligning sort of social throughout everything. And this is not just, again, it's not just a focus on external communications. A big part of it is our internal education. And so when we're recruiting, I suppose one of the biggest skills we're looking for is influencers, people that can come in, whether they're coming in as a digital graduate or someone coming in in a care role, in a management role. We're looking for people that can influence and drive this kind of new change, new behaviours, and we're using a tool called Socialcast to do that, which is an internal social media platform.
So it's not just, as Niall was saying, it's not just training that's required, it's actually infrastructure, it's understanding that this is a whole change management deal, really. It's not just for students to kind of understand, but also the whole organisation.
For us, we need to be accountable. All the organisations, as I said, from care to HR, we need to be accountable for, new behaviours and the way we're using social to do our roles. So it is about bringing in those right skills, but it's also about making sure the people internally are influencing, being accountable, and driving change, because it's, especially within a global organisation, it's very new. So this kind of change process takes some time.
And how are you recruiting people then? How are you making those decisions to get the right people on board? If you've got the right structures inside, how do you get the right people from the outside?
We're using a range of channels. I wouldn't like to sit here, even though I'm very pro social media, I wouldn't like to say that social media has been the answer for all our kind of recruits over the last couple of years. Social is very much in a sort of extra channel that we're using, but we are still very much using events to go and recruit. Only in January we sent our America's recruitment team to CES, and they did some great initiatives to drive talent into the business. We're using kind of internal referrals, so we're focusing a lot on not just using the recruiters to go out to their networks, but actually getting our employees on board and getting them to look to their kind of networks within their social channels. So for us, we're using a lot of channels, but country to country, these kind of things you have to change and adapt and get the recruiters up to speed.
And so this kind of seems to kind of go to Charlie, really, because you're one of those people who's offering those services. How are you able to make decisions about people that come to you, but also from an employer and a prospective employees? How's that all working, and what's really going on?
If you're talking about the skills gap, Brave New Talent, it really does seek to bridge the skills gap. So what we're doing is working with companies to eventually provide a platform where they can actually do learning, essentially. So through our skills communities and through the communities of the actual employers as well, they'll be able to do that kind of thing. If you look, it's a global problem as well. India is producing more people who want education than they can possibly teach, and they haven't got time to train teachers either, so there has to be another model, another way of educating everyone in the world. And we believe that education is very important, that it's a basic right, and that it should be accessible. So we're sort of trying to do that in a sort of a very long-term view.
And what does that involve? I mean, what kind of education, what does education mean in that context?
Well, I think, like you were saying about identifying the employable skills that you want as an employer. So I think Nokia is doing some amazing things. And I think, when you identify what you want, then you're in a better position to say, okay, so let's actually train for this, rather than, all the employers complaining that graduates are coming out with no employability skills, because you can complain about it as much as you like. If you're not actually taking any action to solve it, then you're part of the problem as well. For us, obviously, like you were saying about influencers, Becky, that's something that we find really important. And if you look at the people that we've got, like Gautam Ghosh in India, for example, he's a big HR influencer and very social, and he totally fits in with the kind of model that we're looking to create and replicate.
So, Ruxandra, you actually got your job via social media. So, do you think from last year, where you went into the workplace, was it your first job, or?
It wasn't really my first job. I did have a job as a student, but it was my first proper job, which I started literally 1 week after finishing my exams in uni. So, yes.
And did you sense that you had a skills gap in, you had some skills? Because obviously you had an employer who employed you, but what did you have to learn?
I was lucky enough to know that I want to start working in recruitment kind of 1 or 2 years previous to, starting to apply for jobs. And I just tried to research basically what are recruitment companies in the UK looking for when actually employing graduates, because I didn't really have that much sales experience or anything similar. So I found out that what's very, very looked for at the moment is obviously sales experience, some foreign languages, and stuff like this. So basically what I did, I just made sure that I have those skills. So I worked for, let's say, 1 year as a sales advisor in a health club. So this was the sales experience I needed. And besides this, I learned like 3 foreign languages. So this was very helpful when it came to someone willing to employ me, because my company is very, very global, so they are looking specifically for people with foreign languages skills. So when I went there and I said, look, I speak 4 languages, I think it's quite helpful, and I'm planning to learn another one, then this made me, preferred in front of other candidates. Now, what I would like to add, according to the conversation we had, because I strongly think that employers in the UK are educated when it comes to skills, because I've been next to friends, to university mates who've been applying for different big companies or medium-sized companies last year, and I think the application process is handled very well, generally speaking, and employers do know what they are looking for. But I would approach the problem from the candidate's point of view, because I think that the skill gap comes when that student knows that he wants to get into that role or that company, but how does that student handle the process of actually finding out what that company wants and what that company is looking for to actually get there? That's my first concern, because students don't know how to do this. It's easy to say, oh, I want to work for Oracle, I want to work for Centrica, I want to work for Nokia, but what does Nokia actually want from me, or what do I need to get in order to get this role? Because this is something that students should know actually 1 or 2 years previous to starting their application form in order to be able to actually gain those skills. Then secondly, okay, I've actually got those skills. But second point, do I know how to advertise myself and show everyone that I've actually got those skills? So that's when I think social media comes into place. Do you actually know how to get out there and advertise yourself? I mean, okay, recruitment is a lot about social media nowadays. So for me, it was probably a bit easier to get a recruitment job through social media than other graduates. But I have friends who, in front of me, they got finance graduate jobs through social media by using LinkedIn at companies such as Philips, British Gas, etc., etc. And then the third point, in my opinion, which is very important, okay, I made that company aware that I'm here, I'm on the market, I've got the skills, I'm looking for a role. Now, I need to be ready for a process, which is an interview process, an assessment center process. Who prepares those students for this process? So this is how I would approach everything, First of all, do I have the skills I need? Secondly, do I know how to put myself out there and make them aware that I'm actually available and I've got actually something to offer them? And third, who trains me for this whole process so that I actually succeed? So
that's fantastic advice.
That's my opinion.
Would you say that universities have a role in that last part, or who do you think has that last bit?
6 months ago, I was asked the same question at the Graduate Employment Conference, and I will answer the same question. I think universities don't contribute enough at the moment. Obviously, you can't ask universities to give each person the skills they need to get a certain job. Definitely, that's not possible. But I do think that, career advice offices and everything in university, they are still not focused enough to help students to actually get the roles they want. Because I've never gone to the career advice office at my university in 3 years while I was a student, and they still offer a 2-year postgraduate service. I mean, I don't need them, And I strongly encourage the fact that universities do not teach students how to use social media or all this process, how to approach an interview, how to approach an assessment center, nothing like this. And, I didn't get any help from my university for this. I learned all that I know about social media from Bill Borman, who I think is there at the back of the room. And yes, that's pretty much all. So I think it's a lack in universities.
Becky, I understand that you work with universities, so it's not all universities that perhaps are there. There's some really good best practice going on. What's been your experience?
I've actually had some really nice experience, especially in the last kind of year and a half of working with a couple of universities that I think that are really kind of noticing the exact things that you were just talking about. So an example of this actually came in September when I went to Glasgow for Social Media Week, and I went up to Glasgow University where they actually did a whole talk on this, exactly on this area. And there's a girl that stood up on a presentation how she tweeted her way to getting a job. And they had so many questions from the audience. So these kind of questions are coming up more and more. I do think it does fall with the kind of university side, but I've also noticed kind of university graduates coming out and actually not being taught these skills, but somehow kind of working out their way to sort of falling in these opportunities. There's a guy who now has moved back to New York, but he joined our LinkedIn group, and he just every day he proactively asked questions, he got involved, got kind of the other community members talking. By at least a kind of week, 2 weeks in, I was thinking, who is this guy?
He's your community manager.
And I worked out that he's just a graduate who just wanted to know as much about Nokia as possible. So he's just getting really involved, asking lots of questions, asking people what they were thinking. And he actually ended up then working Social Media Week before. He did like a voluntary work and stuff like that. Now he's in an agency back out in New York because he's just worked out how to get himself like identified. So it's a mix. Obviously there's universities that probably do need to get that education in there. I think, as an employer, coming from an employer myself, I think, we should be aware of these kind of gaps and these problems. And one thing that I'm doing, I don't head up our graduate recruitment, but one thing I do as far as using our LinkedIn group and our Facebook group is really kind of leveraging those tools to kind of actually connect with graduates out there and kind of giving them advice and help of how to learn more about Nokia and what's it like working for a big corporate. So we do use channels as well to try and help from our side.
Lucy, because I realised that you were right in at the start, so you just kind of started this conversation, really. As a HR manager, are you doing similar things as well, or what's been your experience?
Yeah,
here?
I mean, we have several channels that we use for recruitment as well. We try and, wherever possible, find people directly. Sorry to any recruitment agents out there. But, we're a word-of-mouth agency. That's what we do. We want to practice what we preach. And I think for us, we use Twitter, we use, LinkedIn. How many students here are on LinkedIn? Oh, good. That's really good. That's really improving, because that's one thing we've found is often the students aren't where the employers are. So it's really good to see hands up that people are actually using it. We're always sourcing wherever we can to find people directly. And I think that, you're always going to have those people, those graduates, those students who forge their way through. But I think for the majority, there is still definitely some work done to be done by universities. I think my experience when recruiting through universities, even for graduate programs, summer school programs with students, it often seems to be the lecturers who are more enthusiastic and passionate about getting their students' roles than it is the careers team. I've been stonewalled before by careers teams, and it's the lecturers that are trying to push. So that's what I found.
I think that's often from my own experience, it's because you know the students and you're really passionate about individuals, and I can see how that probably does happen. When I'm working with universities, just as my own sort of experience, if there's a role that I know that maybe some students would be able to do, I'd definitely be straight in touch with the lecturers to say, hey, there's this really cool thing, just want you to make you aware of it, because they are in more day-to-day contact with students. I think it's quite a challenge in some ways being a careers person within universities, because you don't get to know individual students necessarily, as Ruxandra was saying. So I'm just going to pause there, because I think we've pretty much, unless anyone's got anything that I've missed, Niall, we've covered quite a lot of ground, I think. So I'd like you to start getting your thinking heads together of what you'd like to talk to the person next to you at. But Niall, one maybe just to round.
Well,
that bit off.
just throw something else into the thinking pot, really, because we've talked a lot about graduate recruitment, and we haven't really talked about the companies who are actually looking for professional, marketing people, people from agencies, bringing people in who are more experienced than just on a graduate training scheme. And I think that is something that there is also a skills gap there, I feel, because, getting the right people is one thing. Getting the right people with the right skills is another. Getting the right people with the right skills who can actually work in a corporate environment is something completely different. So I think, when you're thinking, I wouldn't limit yourself just to the sort of the student issue, because I think, that is clearly one part of the problem. But I think, there may even be an issue there with sort of the more professional, experienced people as well.
Thank you. That was a very good call. So it seems from what the panel is saying, I'm going to try and summarise, is that actually, yes, there might be a little bit of a social media skills gap, but actually the gap is more in being corporate, in knowing some of the wider skills, having well-rounded, doing your research, maybe having the right support. That the list seems to go on and on and on. So it, which might maybe surprise one or two of us here. So the next part is all down to you. I'd like you just to think about, for 5 minutes or so, what we've been talking about here. Maybe get us involved if you really want to come up and talk to us. But maybe talk to the person next to you or the people sitting next to you, behind you. Have a chat. I'm allowing you to have a chat. I know, for about 5 minutes. But what I want from you in return for giving you this gift is some stories, some experiences, some really good questions, some comments, actually guys, you've got it all wrong, this is the answer, stuff. I want good stuff in return for your 5-minute chat. So you have 5 minutes, go. Live stream, then I'll...
Okay, everyone. Too much of a chat here.
I normally tap a glass.
Okay, everyone. I love the fact that there was so much chat and it just took me so long to get your attention back. That's great. I hope that means, though, that you're going to have really good stories, not just, that was just an excuse for a chat. So, somewhere we have a lovely person who has a mic. I must insist that as much as I'd love to get more, just chat across the room, it could be a little difficult, but we do have 2 mics, but one has to be down here and one there. There have also been some comments on Twitter. I don't know if any of you are actually following the Mind the Gap Twitter feed. I just thought I'd mention one or two whilst we're sort of here. There was one that was just talking to Ruxandra about sort of how her experiences of getting her job on Twitter, and it was just sort of coming back with, that's fantastic, but perhaps, not everyone could use that route. So it was just sort of giving the counterbalance to that. And there's quite a good conversation going on between Cloud9 Rec, if you are listening, Community and Amoil, if you want to kind of dip in there, about really what, is this industry dependent, is this university's responsibility, etc. Just thought I'd give them a plug. Right. So, who would like to be the first person to kind of give a comment? There's a pointing of a... Okay, there's one there, and then we can...
Yeah, hi there. Farhan
Do you want to stand up and say who you are?
My name's Nicola Powell, and I'm me, really. Farhan and I were talking about the conversation. I came in late, so I came in when we were talking about skills, and we talked about the need for universities to have, upskill students. But in my mind, universities are theoretical places, so I think it might be the case where business has to educate them. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of corporates are still getting to grips with social media and what their strategy is. So to expect universities who tend to sometimes follow the corporate machine to sort of upskill their students, I think is a bit much. I'm not saying that they can't, and there will always be forerunners or innovators who show the way, but I think they're...
So are we expecting too much from universities, really? If businesses can't do it, there's a shaking of the head there.
I don't know if we're expecting too much from universities, but I'm just saying the onus seems to be universities aren't doing this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, universities, it's a really weird sort of economic place that we find ourselves in, and a lot of the corporates have a lot of money, so they should actually be going in and maybe helping them out and saying, this is where the gaps we're finding. But it is up to students as well.
I want to hear from the man with the hat. He's shaking, and also Ruxandra as well.
I appreciate your comment, and I totally agree with you, but I have to contradict a point of view. Don't expect employers to come and educate you how to get the jobs, because if you are at a university, if you study at a university like I studied, Middlesex University, ranked 75 in the UK top universities, I'm sorry, but last year, companies like British Telecom or PwC refused to look at us because they said, well, you are not in top 36 universities. So there's the moment when if you expect employers to come to you and educate you and your university, then you actually cut your chance to work for those employers. It's not impossible, they will still look at you, but you've got to get yourself out there and make them see you, because otherwise, because of this mentality, they will not come and look for you. You know what I mean? So just consider this as well.
I think students are beginning to become a bit more savvy as they're paying a lot more as well, as to what universities are good at getting a job afterwards. But I'd like to hear from the man with the hat.
From the hat, I'm Bill. My view is 3 things, which I'll keep really short. But first of all is that in terms of the skills gap, the universities have failed, and we're about 20 years behind in terms of skills. The second thing is that in terms of universities sell young people the dream that if you go to university and you invest all this cash, which is not an insignificant amount, you're doing that because you're going to get yourself a better job. That's the dream that most people are being sold. So I think there is a responsibility from the university to prepare people to be able to get that job. and make the gap. And my experience has been when you're trying to work with universities, which I do quite a lot, to get them to either connect with corporate businesses over putting people forward for paid internships, not free internships, for training programs, or even for having people in the university to provide free training which is offered to prepare students for work. They don't even return the phone calls. So my experience of academia in terms of, I think there is a responsibility from universities to fulfil the dream which they sell, which is to prepare people for work and get them into work, by what they educate them, by teaching them the right things, and by giving them the skills. Secondly, they should also be really concentrating on career service in the first year. Now, from corporate business point of view, it's very difficult to get universities who are prepared to work with you. That's been my experience. It's actually very difficult to get them to be prepared to return your phone call. So,
I'd love to hear from any kind of people in the room who have tried to get in touch with universities, or universities who try to do it. Also bearing Niall's point as well, that it's not just about graduates, it's about professionals. Okay, there's a really keen hand there, and also the lady with the red hair as well. So the keen hand.
That me?
Yes, it is. You're very keen. Say who you are and why you're so keen.
My name is Goethe Sigthorsson. I'm a lecturer at the University of Greenwich. So, yes, I'm one of those university people.
Defend universities. Go on.
I do return phone calls. I used to be very good at that. I actually have a question about, so what should we do about this? So, both Lucy and Ruxandra, you mentioned sort of concrete steps that universities might have to take in order to respond to the needs of their students. So I'm just curious, given that we are dealing with, from the university point of view, we deal with jobs now that didn't exist when my second year students started university. Never mind the third year students. I mean, a lot of those students are entering a job market that's radically different from what it looked like when they started university. And so, are there tactics that you would like to see us at the university level use to respond more quickly to sort of the job market or employers' needs?
Lucy.
Hi.
Big question.
For me, I think, I think that there still needs to be a bridge between employers and the universities. But I think there's practical skills that I think should almost maybe be made compulsory for all students to attend some sort of career thing. They're obviously being educated in those skills, but then there's also the bit where how do you then use those skills in a professional capacity? So CV writing, interview skills. If every student was at least taught what an interview might look like and the types of questions you might be asked, I think that would prepare them a lot. And that's not necessarily job specific. That's across the board, specific training on how to write a CV, how to approach someone with a cover letter, how not to use text language in an email, things like that still come up time and time again, and actually, bridge that gap a little bit by bringing in either corporate sponsors or whatever it might be, but just people who can say, these are the 5 big no's or these are the 5 big yeses that you need to do on a day-to-day basis, and somehow build that in, that, in order to, even at second year level, when they're starting to look for jobs, actually saying, right guys, as part of your course, you all need to do this training on how to do these things.
Are CVs even relevant? I mean, LinkedIn, surely, or, do you
but
still want
a lot of students
CV?
aren't on LinkedIn. So again, your LinkedIn is your CV. So, people should be being taught how to use that as well, how to use it appropriately.
Becky. I think we were talking about LinkedIn actually just now.
Yeah, I've got two things, because I'd like to kind of come back on yours, but on another thing on your kind of point, actually we get most of our graduates through LinkedIn over Facebook, so the traffic coming to our corporate website to apply for graduate roles, and actually obviously now all level, but if I look at the graduate side, we have double the amount of traffic coming from LinkedIn applying for graduate roles than Facebook. So that's kind of turning for us. But saying that, I'd say 6 months ago that wouldn't have been the case, looking at how the traffic's changed. But I think graduates are going on LinkedIn now. I think they've really picked up on that. So, I think that will continue to improve because I think graduates are being more proactive by going to events like this. They're going to kind of overall kind of industry events and picking up on some of those points. Just to come back on your side, because I do have a really lovely story, because I do actually work with the Holt Business School. And what they do is they give the graduates an opportunity to actually set up their own events based on what they want to learn. And I go to the event sort of twice a year. And especially because I'm obviously marketing focused, so the marketing masters graduates, what they do is they set up an event and they reach out and invite their own speakers. So I get the graduates emailing me every year because they've got my contact details, and they'll say, can you come and speak to us? Our graduates want to know about this, and they always come to me with exactly what they want to know about: CVs, their digital identity, online reputation, and they'll actually reach out to me. And I think it's such a lovely approach for graduates to actually go to the corporates and say, you know, we just want your help, can you come and speak to us? So I go and they set up it could be in an evening after work or in an afternoon event, and I just go and speak to a group of graduates and do something like this. You know, there'll be room where they can ask me as many questions, but I'll come and try and give them some guidance to begin with. And I think that's a really nice thing if graduates get more of an opportunity to actually work out their own events and try and get their own education around their degrees. I think they do have the time for it. Speaking to them, a lot of them say they have this spare time, and that's the best sort of spare time. They could, event they could put their time to.
I'd like to move on. So there was a lady with a gorgeous Titian hair.
Hi, my name's Selena, and I run the social media for a global fashion brand. But I graduated in June, so I'm a 2011 graduate. And now I hold that position. I'm just going to voice the more sort of radical side of my opinion, and is that do you really need to say, like spoon feed students the fact that they need to be on LinkedIn, the fact that they need to be with social media? Because I got my job because, and I'm not saying because I used the career service and that was really helpful, but, I was already on LinkedIn. The reason I got my job is because my manager who interviewed me had read my fashion blog. I feel like the point that you were making was that there's a skills gap, but it's almost like it's so hard to get a job because there's so many talented people. I feel like you don't even need anybody else almost in that pool, because surely if you want to offer the job, say if someone wants to work for Nokia in social media, shouldn't they already know all these things? And my point being, in this session, I'd just like to hear about what you think about the skills gap almost above, because my issue now is some of my managers above me with social media, they're the ones that the skills gap is there, because say my manager will write onto the Facebook wall herself and be like, buy this dress, and I'm like, oh, why are you doing that? That looks really strange. And they almost come to me every day and approve my content.
Apparently.
Well, I don't. That's the gap that I try and deal with myself, because I sort of get given these tasks and they're like, make 100 fashion bloggers wear this dress, and I'm like, it's not. I always have to explain that's not the way it works, and I have to do things to please them rather than what I believe is the best strategy. So how do you think that I could approach that with managers if the gap is...
Now I think that was an amazing segue. You get just points for segueing two quite disparate subjects. Niall, and then I want to hear from... We've heard a lot from this side of the room. You guys have been a bit quiet, so, I want to hear from that side.
I think I'll come to your last question first, because I think it's a really, really good point. The real big issue here, okay? Companies are employing people like that lady there, putting them in a social media box, ticking that box. We've done social media, we've got the social media person, and then they don't know how to manage them, they don't know how to evaluate them, they don't know how to set objectives for them, they don't know how to appraise them, and guess what's going to happen? She's going to go.
Are you going to go?
Well, if she can't, yeah, but this is the problem. It's such a short-termism focus, and not thinking sustainably about social media in all its aspects. And this is exactly the point. It's a case of how am I going to keep someone who I'm hiring in and I don't have the skills or the knowledge or the ability to manage them or evaluate them properly? How the hell am I going to retain them? So actually, it's a complete waste of effort. You may as well not bother, basically, because within a year, they're going to go, unless you actually sort yourself out, sort your own skills out, get your own education levels up, be able to manage properly. Now, to your second point about what do you do about it, well, I mean, there's probably 101 different answers to that, but, I think what you've probably got to do, and I don't want this to be a sort of career counselling session for one person, but I think that, the issues that, the people you are trying to reach and trying to educate internally, what you've got to do is you've got to find the things that actually matter to them. And that might be metrics, for instance. So that's the way around it. The way around it is to sort of say, right, okay, so we know you care about this stuff. So actually what I'm now going to do is if it's metrics, for instance, I'm now going to actually, talk about that. I'm not going to talk about, sort of fashion bloggers or things like that. I'm going to talk about, right, how do we link this stuff to sales? How can we have a conversation around those kind of issues? Because then they're probably going to sit up and take note.
And I think what you're experiencing is very, very common. In my experience of sort of doing, because I'm teaching strategy to companies, and they often think, oh, the young ones, they can do it. And it's like, yeah, but you also need to kind of get involved. And your experience is in thinking strategically, thinking about communications, all the stuff that actually these guys have been saying that you need. So I think there is that sort of, you're not alone. I think but I think companies need to think not just about education and training, but actually more holistic sort of business strategy, full stop. In my opinion, but I'm not here for my opinion. I want to hear from this side. So, can we have the mic down here? Sorry. So, who are you? And
hi, I'm Anna, and I'm about to start a new marketing director job next week. But to pick up on actually quite a few points, I was wondering if the preparation you get from university, how important is the degree that you do? I graduated from Middlesex University 15 years ago. I got drama classes, I got CV writing classes because I did a business degree. 3 months ago, I finished my MBA from Henley Business School. We had all the lessons, all the LinkedIn sessions, everything. So maybe all that the business students are getting, maybe other degrees are not getting. So maybe I think it depends from the school. But as you say, it's not university-wide, which is really unfair because we are paying the same or we have paid the same. On the other hand, as a marketing director, I've hired, 20 people from various different countries, but so many of those graduates don't bother to send in a cover letter or things like that. So if people do what you did, you will stand out because you actually put in the effort of identifying the skills that you want to identify, that you think you will need later. And on the other hand, as saying what you were saying and picking up on what you just said, for example, thinking that everything changed in the marketing world in, say, the last 2-3 years. I booked myself into a social media intensive at NYU. Best month in my life. When Americans say intensive, it is intensive. But I learned a lot.
You and Clay Shirky are now like that, are you? Huh? You and Clay Shirky are now like that.
No, but it is true. So I think from the more senior people, they need to. I needed to understand. I didn't understand. Of course, I had LinkedIn for last 6 or 7 years. But how does it all work? So I think it takes. From all sides have to be very aware.
And was that personal investment?
Absolutely personal investment.
So
this is me.
It wasn't a
company.
I
took 2 years to take care of me.
But no company sort of said, actually, I want to send you for a month to NYU.
But I took 3 months off after my MBA. I started looking for a job 4 weeks ago. I had 5 offers, and everyone said that NYU intensive was outstanding because I get it.
Anyone else from this side? So the gentleman behind you.
Hi, Declan Scully. I'm a lecturer at Roehampton University. I just make a few quick points. One is I think the skills gap is not just unique to social media. It's something which UK universities suffer across the board, from marketing through to the sciences and other areas. There is a big issue in terms of employability, in terms of the extent to which universities have a duty to prepare their graduates for the job market. I mean, a lot of traditional academics haven't really regarded it as part of their job. Their job is to build on knowledge and develop it. And career services often were pretty underdeveloped until quite recently in many of the older universities. I think what is going to change is the greater transparency that's going to come in later this year, because all universities will have to have something called a KIS, a Key Information Statement, on the front page of its website. And this will give transparency to all these students who are paying $9,000 a year and more. Basically, it will set out exactly where recent graduates have got jobs, so people can see what sort of jobs people have got. And this is going to put a lot of pressure on the universities to really hone in on the skills that they need to get into the job market. My other very quick point is about, one of the things I've been doing, I've only been in the job about a month, is I've been trying to put together some courses on digital media and social media and so on. And although I have a background in marketing, the thing that struck me about it is a subject where a lot of the knowledge is tacit. That's to say, it's held in the hands of practitioners. It's not something that's often written down. If you do a literature review, you will find that most of it is sort of case study based, people giving their stories about their war stories, about how they've got some fantastic success in various situations. Empirical evidence is lacking in terms of the success of various strategies. Trying to work out what the marketing mix should be within the context of social media is a very tricky subject. Everybody's got their own version. And my final point is I think there's a lot more to be done. If anybody's interested in helping me develop some courses, please speak to me afterwards. I will be very happy to put your knowledge down and share it with
I definitely agree with you about standardisation when it comes to teaching social media, because I've been teaching it for the last 2 years, and I've been having to constantly develop what I do. And there is no curriculum. There is no sort of standardisation. As a person who also can teach English as a foreign language, and I've just become a ski instructor. Yeah, I know. But there is a formalisation there, and that we don't yet have that because it's such a new subject. I'm also an ex-Roehampton student, so maybe we should talk afterwards. But LinkedIn has all that information as well, so it's quite interesting. If you go to a university on LinkedIn, it will show you where a lot of the graduates have gone to and the businesses that they're now employed at. So it's quite by subject, but also by employer, which is quite interesting, just so everyone's aware.
But isn't that mentality just skating to where the puck is and not where the puck is going?
Explain.
So, I mean...
Oh, sorry, just actually, could you say that again?
That's kind of the mentality where universities get stuck of where the puck is going. They look at empirical evidence and then they go to where that evidence is going, where the market has moved 2 steps ahead, right? So I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Texas, and I co-founded a company called Spreadfast in Austin. So where social was in 2008, we knew enterprises were going to use social media as a communication platform. So we built out to 2010, right? We starved for 2 years, and the market came to us. Very similar to where universities are today. The jobs are in probably mobile app platforms right now and kind of big data intelligence, where if you looked at the empirical evidence, it'd be community management or some other, blogging. So it's probably, you have to kind of think ahead versus thinking of where it is today.
So do you have a solution for that, though? Because you're basically saying this is really unpredictable. What are universities supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, you get guys like Clay Shirky. You get thought leaders at the university level who have to predict where the market is going. You go with business leaders who are feeling the pain of what their customers are asking for, and then going and then working with that local community. I would say that being an adjunct professor, I know when I developed my social media strategy class at the University of Texas, it was building a Facebook app in 2008, which was kind of a little bit ahead of its time in 2008. It was here, but for an MIS marketing class, it wasn't. It was a little cutting edge for that. And then developing marketing programs and measurements around that. So, yeah.
Okay, and panel are nicely slight. I said I'd keep it nice and that it was actually all about you, and we're doing a good job so far. Any thoughts that you'd like to? Because we've heard quite a lot. Anything, Charlie? Yeah, I was just sort of, you've been quiet.
It's not often. Doesn't happen often, so you should enjoy the silence. I was at Community Manager Summit last week, actually. Really interesting to see how it's a job that has been done for quite a few years, for everything from forum moderation to the kind of job I do now, which is building communities from the ground up, rather than just going to a community that's already kind of formed around a product or a game or something like that. And I think it's definitely going to be the case that it does become professionalised and academicised. There must be an actual word for that I don't know. Let's make one up.
Probably people in the room who do.
But I don't know quite how the best way to form it is, but it's definitely going to happen, I think, from what I can gather. But it was really funny because there are a few courses available now if you want to do community management. And they said, yes, these courses look really great, and so-and-so's running them, and so-and-so's on a panel, and he runs one, blah, blah. So who's done one of these courses? Nobody in the room. Everyone has just sort of picked it up as they've developed they've sort of grown up with social, and they've sort of picked up these skills along the way. But of course that means that not everybody picks them up, which I think is where the gap comes in. And if you didn't have the natural interest, then you won't have been in that position. So it's one of those, it's a difficult one, and I don't know whether it's right to make it academic or whatever, but I'm really interested in how it's going to go. And surely we can influence it and make it a good, employable resource, rather than something that becomes like English literature. No offence to everyone who's done English literature here. Becomes the degree of nothing, and any degree, as my tutors said. I know, right? Well, my tutors, I did international relations, which is any degree, which means you can do anything or you can do nothing.
Sorry, stop digging.
I know. Well, no, they sat us down. They sat us down. They were like, so what do you actually want to do as a career? I was like, don't know. And so my tutors did try, but there's not a lot you can do.
I'd like to just take us back. We've been discussing a lot about universities, but actually the professional part. Again, I'm looking to this side because this side's quite chatty. Has anyone got some sort of insights or comments around that? We need the mic over here. Great.
I'm Laura. I've got my own social media business. I didn't go to university, and I just kind of interned my way into a digital marketing agency, and then into a social media agency, and then kind of set up my own thing, really, which is going really well. But I was just wondering, in terms of a degree, obviously I don't have one, how important is it to have one, do you guys think, in terms of recruiting someone? Because when people have the experience and the skills necessary, and they've been on these courses, and they know how it works, and they can prove they know how it works, how important is going to university at the end of the day? Because
so actually, universities, we don't need you. She's got a job. What does the panel kind of think on that?
It's a tricky one because I've got my personal opinion and then my kind of Nokia hat on. I don't have a degree either, so and I don't think I'd be where I was now if I'd gone to university, only because I came out, I had a university place, and I fell into recruitment, fell in love with it, and worked very hard, and now I'm working for kind of a global organisation. So for me, I haven't missed out, and I haven't lost anything by not going. I know for some of the skills that I've got and some of the kind of knowledge that I've got, if I sort of within my team, I've got skills and things that people haven't got. I'm also getting stuff from people that have gone to university. So, I'm sort of I suppose a bit on the fence. I know when we recruit, we do look for universities. We do look for degrees. A lot of times, especially some of our marketing ones, they do like masters at Nokia or MBAs. They love MBAs, but I don't necessarily think it's a be-all and end-all. But I think it teaches a lot of people some things. I know a lot of people say that, as far as kind of life skills and actual personal development, even outside the sort of education place, it's really, really helped them. So it's a bit of, I don't know if it's a bit unanswered really from me. I think it's going to help some people and it won't help some.
What about the rest of the panel? Suddenly no one wants to answer this question. It's like a hot potato suddenly.
Right. To be honest, I don't think it's mandatory to have a degree to do what you really want. And what I've noticed is that a lot of big companies, I don't know if Nokia does the same, they do encourage one-year placements straight after high school so that they kind of identify certain skills, and eventually those high school finishers, they would, after that one-year placement, they would just stay within the company, or they just take the decision to move on and do a degree and then come back to the same company or something similar. Now, personally speaking, I studied law and business, so I studied a bit of everything, but I've done it mostly because of the mentality of my family. So I do think mentality plays a huge role in here, and a lot if, my mom is a teacher and my father is an engineer, they will be like, oh, how come would you think you won't go to university? And this was in my family. My grandmother is a lawyer, and she wanted me to study. I mean, I didn't have anything against it, because for me this was the way to actually move from my home country to the UK, and I did learn a lot of things, a lot of helpful things. But then when I finished university and I said, okay, I want to become a recruitment consultant, then there was a big tragedy in my family. How come? Are you not going to go forward and study for masters, for et cetera, et cetera? So I think it's a lot about mentality and about what you really want to do and how strong you are to actually fight for what you want and how much you actually know what you want to do. So I wouldn't say yes or no. I think it's more about this.
Lucy, Niall, any kind of grasp?
I mean, I'd just say it depends. I mean, there's no. It really does. I mean, it depends. It depends on the job. It depends on the level that you're looking to go in at. It depends on the salary that you think you want to get. It depends on the employer. It depends on the industry. So many different things. I mean, I think the thing I would say, I think, from my experience at least, of people of brands who are hiring people who they want sort of experience, and they want experience of doing something with a sort of bit of a social media slant, for instance. I think it's more about, are you qualified to do the main thing that we want, whether that's marketing or communications or customer care or whatever it happens to be, internal communications, as opposed to are you qualified in terms of being able to apply social media to that stuff. I don't think it's necessarily an issue of university or not. I think it's more an issue of qualification.
Sounds like you. Oh, Lucy, I thought you passed it on.
No, not quite, sorry. No, I'd just say, I think, as long as you've got the experience to back up what you're doing, you may have a tougher road getting there, because I think often university, a degree is seen as a bit of a ticket through. But if you've got the experience and the nous to do it, then there's nothing to stop you. I think just sometimes going that probably what would be described as a non-traditional route can maybe you do a few more sideways steps than always going straight forward, if that makes sense.
There we go. You've definitely had that question answered. We've got, I think, about 4 more minutes left, roughly. There's some big hands up at the end, and there suddenly we've got. So I liked this gentleman with the jumper first, and then we'll see what comes out though.
Cool. Hi, my name is Farhan. Question for you guys. If there's a massive skills gap now, 2 years from now, what are we going to need to have done to have filled that? Because clearly brands, businesses, everybody's going to want to recruit more socially qualified staff, and there's going to be more of that requirement which isn't being met right now. So 2 years from now, how do you propose solving that?
And is that across the board? Is that professional, graduate, just
professional,
anywhere?
graduate, at all levels.
And also, if anyone has an opinion on that, you're experts too, remember. So if anyone has an opinion on that, get thinking. Big question. 2 years' time.
So from Nokia, we're looking at 2 ways. Yes, we're doing a lot of kind of focused recruitments, and when we're going out there, and again at all levels, we're making sure we're bringing in the right skills, the right capabilities. Actually, when I joined Nokia, my focus was to recruit digital marketing staff, but that's broadened out, and now I cover the whole marketing organisation. But when digital roles come up, I still get kind of picked to support on that. But internally, we're really aware, and actually going back to what you guys were talking about earlier, sorry I've forgotten your name, but from the fashion side, we're really aware that, you know, we're bringing in some sort of maybe sort of up and coming, as we call it, sort of digital talent. And yes, some of the kind of leaders don't always know your skills, your capabilities, and actually what you're really supposed to be doing and driving. So one key thing we're doing is actually building a whole, we've got like a sort of capability-focused university within the business, and this is kind of in action. It's not there yet, but and it's covering different capability skills. So it's not just digital and social media. It could cover consumer analytics. It could cover retail. It could cover any kind of capability area that could fit in Nokia. And we're building up sort of actual ongoing development programs, not only to make sure that people coming in are up to speed and there, but actually retraining and re-educating some leaders that are aware that they're out of sort of certain skill sets. So we're really, really focusing. We've actually got one guy at the moment who's reviewing the whole organisation, his internal, looking at where all our digital capability gaps are, and he's actually sort of doing sort of specific programs and stuff to get everyone up to speed. And this will be a global program to make sure that people don't feel like you do in the organisation. So, but that's an ongoing thing, and it's probably going to be going for years to come. So,
do you have any suggestions? Seeing as you came up with a question, I'm noticing maybe from Twitter you do. You can't get away with it, you see.
No worries. So, potential of apprenticeships. I think in general, with the trend of less qualified graduates and a workforce that isn't being, their needs aren't being met, there's a need there, which, especially within the social media community, I think there's a massive gap there right now, where if there was the opportunity for people to get on board a bit earlier with a bit more hand-holding, but actually to learn under the wing of someone more experienced without a view to having that as their job, but just as a work experience thing, spending 6 months doing social media in a brand, in an agency, in a business organization, it starts developing those skills in a way that you wouldn't be able to do if you did it through university or you were already on the job. And it may also be then an opportunity for people that are already qualified professionals that want to change careers to be able to do a 6-month stint somewhere as an apprenticeship and internship. Of course. Completely. But with a view to you're being paid in proportion to the level of skills and experience that you bring to the job. Obviously, a marketing professional with 5 years experience interning in social would have different dimensions to that role that they could bring to a graduate that understands social but doesn't really get marketing.
Okay, there wasn't Mr. Keenhan though, see, I did notice, but the gentleman at the back over here, it's Steve. Hello, Steve.
Actually, to be fair, a lot of it was. I had a very similar question
Steve,
to
would you like
Farhan.
to say who you were?
I'm Steve from Cloud9. I recruit social media and digital people, so it's kind of on my daily agenda. What Farhan was saying actually is probably the key point. Listening to all this sort of talk about what universities should do and what employers should do, but there's a big, we use the phrase the skills gap, there's a huge skills gap in the universities being able to train people how to use social media, because nobody in university knows how to train. So let's not ask the university. Well, yes, generically I'll say yes. I'm glad we found somebody who does. But the point is to ask organisations that actually don't have the capabilities to do it is actually defeating the object. The problem is in the industry, and the industry is the one that needs to find a way to solve its own employment angle. Now, and that's where I think Farhan's made a great point. Providing the opportunities, the platforms for young graduates or non-graduates, because I think equally there's plenty of unemployed non-graduates out there with some great skills. It's the industry that needs to do something to solve this problem, because the problem is the industry's. It's not the university's problem. The university, probably to an extent, the programme doesn't particularly care whether they've grabbed some to social media yet, because they've got lots of other things to concern themselves about. It's the industry that has the problem, so I just think the industry should be doing something to try and find, and as Farhan says, the social media community should be the one that are empowering the opportunity to get graduates to train.
I'm feeling like this should be a vote. You know, who hands up, who actually thinks that is the industry's responsibility. But I don't want any embarrassment because, you know, it's suddenly putting on the spot. I think our time is up. So have you, as a panel, have you got any final thoughts that you just briefly like to kind of leave us with?
I'm holding the mic, so no, I agree. I mean, obviously, I think that employers should be taking more responsibility for educating for the skills that they want, and Brave New Talent wants to do that as well. So that's what we're working towards. You know, be the solution.
Brave New Talent is the solution. Says Brave New Talent.
No, I said employers should be the solution. Right. So they should be their own solution to their own problems, essentially. Right. And I think that's what Nokia are trying to do. I'm going to hand the mic to Becky now.
I agree with you. We are trying to do it. I think that, you know, from my point of view and just kind of have worked, because I've worked in the sort of on the pure digital marketing side and then the marketing side, I think, you know, whether it's actual digital skills or just marketing skills, I think the industry moves at the speed of light, really. So actually, even on the marketing side, with people with offline skills, even those kind of capability, there's gaps in there as things are changing, as kind of offline retail strategies are changing. So it's not necessarily just a social media gap. I think, you know, within marketing, that it's just constantly evolving. And I think, you know, the gaps that we're talking about, we're going to always talk about because things just move so fast. So I don't think there'll ever be one solution. But I think, you know, between the kind of universities and employers, we just have to keep on top of the industry as best we can. So,
Ruxandra.
I just think that on the employer side, first of all, because the fashion lady there said something very, very interesting, the idea is not to hire one person, one social media specialist for the entire company if the entire company is actually not ready to embrace that change. So that's what I would say on the employer side. And then on the candidate side, to say like this, I mean, obviously we can wait for the industry to change, for the employers to change, for the universities to change, but I think it's more down to the individual and for the approach they take. So it's just about being proactive and, you know, getting out there and do something rather than wait for someone else to do something for you.
Lucy?
I just think, just picking up on what Becky was saying, I think, you know, changing a complete university syllabus is a big thing to do, and I think especially educating people who are already out of education as such, I think there are quicker ways of making it part of your internal strategy and you know, creating that personal development and training and upskilling people within your workforce. You know, there are companies that do consulting and help with things like that, but also just, you know, making it more of a lost the word. More of a commitment from an employer also to help people upskill within their industry, as well as working with universities as well.
Niall, you're going to have the final word.
I have the final word. Final word is I think it's a simple case of market economics, to be honest. I mean, we're basically talking about demand and supply. And, you know, for an employer who is, you know, sort of putting the problem onto the supply side of the equation without actually, you know, as an employer deciding what it is that you need, I think is never going to take us anywhere. So I think, you know, for any organisation, I mean, talking about social media skills gap, I mean, Nokia are accepted because they're obviously doing sort of great stuff and know what they need. But, you know, most of these companies don't actually know what skills they have, you know, what their capabilities are internally before they even think about what other capabilities they might need. So I think it's market economics. You know, once the demand is determined and the nature of that demand and what it looks like, then supply is pretty easy.
Thank you. Thank you to our panel, and thank you to you. So you all get a round of applause. And also thank you as well to those who are watching and tweeting as well. We did hear you. So I think that's the end of this. Is there drinks or anything? No, you just have to move.